to throw. One-on-one, Davis has it. Touchdown! Carolina wins! Carolina is the Coastal Division champion! Javonte Williams to the left of Howell. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howell looking, standing tall, lets it go, man there! Touchdown! Touchdown, Carolina! The pistol, Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson, he tried to jump pass, and it's intercepted! Surratt intercepts it! Holy cow, Carolina's gonna win! And off to Javonte Williams again, pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry. Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back, pressure coming, Aguilar floats it up, incomplete! No flags! Head on back up the mountain! Carolina wins it in double overtime! Loftus, out of the shotgun, throws to the end zone, incomplete! Incomplete! The bell belongs to us! Carolina wins it 47-45 in double overtime! Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotti, here with you guys as always. And tonight, talking a little bit of recruiting because Carolina with two massive flips complete on the 2026 recruiting trail. We got to tell you about those here tonight and also give you an update on some of the other stuff going on around Carolina football in terms of the All-ACC teams and another watch list for a Tar Heel player. We'll tell you all about that here coming up on this edition of the podcast. But as I mentioned, it is time to start with the two flips that Carolina made today. It started earlier this afternoon with a guy that Carolina was expected to flip, that they knew was going to flip today, and that was Viliami Moala. He ends up committing to Carolina over Oklahoma, Oregon, and others. Moala, the one-time Oregon commit, backed off his commitment back in early June, and that followed his official visit to campus, which did take place during the month of June 18th, to be exact. He took his official visit, then went out to Oregon, and by all measures did take that official visit as well. But Carolina does enough to be able to flip his commitment when it's all said and done. Of course, there were a lot of rumors around his commitment. I know there's some involving the immigration status of his father and everything like that. I can tell you that I have absolutely no clue what there is, whether or not those rumors are true. I would believe that they are not. I find it hard to believe that that's something that's being promised to him, is that they will be able to get his father back into the United States. But there are people that are running with that rumor as of right now, and so we'll have to monitor that and see whether or not that actually is part of this whole thing. Now, Moala, guy that isn't necessarily a blue-chip prospect, but is on the precipice of being one of those guys. The number 602 rated prospect overall in the 2026 class, according to 24/7 Sports composite player rankings, the number 74 defensive tackle. He spent last season at Bingham High School in South Jordan, Utah, and in 11 games, he finished with 99 total tackles, 22 tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks, 35 quarterback hurries, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble on his way to earning 6A first-team All-State honors. The year prior, as a sophomore at Davis High School in Kaysville, Utah, he collected 39 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and 1 fumble recovery. So it's a guy that's kind of bounced around throughout his high school career. He's going to bounce around again. This year was expected to go to Williamette High School up there in Eugene, Oregon, was going to play close to where the Oregon Ducks, of course, are, and that was, the expectation. But now he has instead moved to Thompson High School down in Alabaster, Alabama. It's a high school that Tar Heel fans should be familiar with. That's where Connor Harrell came from. That's an area that Carolina, of course, is trying to get even more involved in this recruiting class. The state of Alabama, where they have had some success at Jackson High School with a couple of commitments out of there, actually a few commitments out of there with Keon Chapman, as well as Keegan Chapman and safety Jamarian Gordon. So Carolina's had some nice success in the state of Alabama, and that continues here with this commitment. Now, the thing about Moala is that you love his size. 6'3", 340 pounds, has, the size and the skill set to take up two gaps and stop the run the way that the Tar Heels are going to want to from their nose tackles. Biggest thing about him is that there really isn't a lot of film on him. And that's what makes him a real tough evaluation here, is that, he's a guy that comes, from a school in Utah and Bingham High School that I just don't think really kept up with putting a lot of these highlight films together. His sophomore year, they put together his highlight film. It was only 2 minutes and 9 seconds, so not really long enough to get the greatest feel for him, but still, gave us a little bit that we could go off of. But, what would really help is if you got to look at that junior film. I mean, with the numbers that he put up, 99 total tackles, 22 tackles for loss, and those 12 and a half sacks, that's pretty crazy. Those are numbers that, we have seen some Tar Heel players come in with out of the high school level. Some of them have been successful. Most of them have not been successful because, when they come from these schools that do sort of skew stats a little bit, we've seen it at the high school level before, it makes guys appear to be better than they actually are. That's the one thing that's a little bit tricky with high school recruiting and stats. Now, I'm not sure if that's what happened here. I would have liked to see some of the film to be able to judge it and see if he really made that significant of a leap. I doubt, out of a defensive tackle spot to finish with 99 total tackles. They're going to be crediting you probably with some ones where you weren't necessarily super involved in the play. But still, I do think it is interesting that he made a leap from his sophomore to junior season. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. But based off of what he shows on film, he definitely has, the ability to shed blocks down. That's something that was very evident. Guys, don't really get their hands on him, or if they do, he finds a way to power past them. Really like, the way he uses his size and length. He does a really good job of that. The physicality is solid. I don't think it's anything that's over the top. Now, again, that's something that could have changed going into his junior year, and we just don't know about that. But that's certainly something that you do like to see. The one thing that I do like is that when you go to the other side of the ball, he is a guy that plays on both sides of the ball, does play offensive tackle for his team as well. He's very physical there, very physical in the run game, really piles up the pancake blocks. So I think that's something that would translate over to the other side. He does have a very nice release off the line of scrimmage, which is really, really advantageous for him going against guards. Those guys are typically, of course, going to be slower than tackles. So usually it's going to set you up to be in a pretty good position and make you a tough guy to stay in front of. And he moves well for his size, especially when you're lugging around 340 pounds, especially with a 6'3" frame. It makes sense that you could be one of the slower players out there, but he actually moves relatively well. And I think playing a little bit of offensive tackle probably helps you with that. So I do think that that's an area of his game that might surprise people. When I looked at it, I think it's a solid addition to the Tar Heels defensive line class. I just, wish we had a little bit more on him. If we had that junior year tape, you do kind of wonder, is this a guy that would be a 4-star prospect? Because he's got everything else. He's got the measurables. It seems like he's got the ability to get into the backfield and make plays. And it seems like the physicality is there at least as much as it needs to be. That's an area that you could maybe see an uptick in. But again, if that happened in his junior year, we just really don't know about it. one of the other things, just going to some of the scouts that took a look at him. This is Greg Biggins' write-up on him on 24/7 Sports. This is from 2024, so this was before his junior season, and a lot of it is the same. Dominant two-way player who is, looking like he's going to play either as a nose guard or could be a center offensive guard in college. Definitely, he sees him as a road grader, very physical and punishing run blocker. And he does have the mean streak that carries over defensively, more of a straight line bull rusher, but does show good hands and has a quick first step. And he is a true nose who handles double teams, stuffs the run, and will win one-on-one matchups with his strength and toughness. I hope he's right. I think, I trust those guys over there. They've seen him. I was hoping that would be, more recent, the evaluation, but unfortunately it's not. Still, I think this is a guy that is more than worth the risk for Carolina to bring him in, especially with the fact that you missed on T.I. Umokayas. There aren't really any other targets for Carolina at the defensive tackle spot. Again, we mentioned Joseph Pecco. We talked about how he was a guy that, still hasn't committed right now, had Carolina in his top 2, but it seems like he's probably going to end up with his father at Colorado. And so this was really the option for Carolina that was there. And there's a reason that they had him on campus. I think this staff really likes him. And, the thing is that you've already got one guy in Trayshawn Ruffin that's there, that's a part of this class out of that nose tackle spot. This is just an added guy to that spot. There is talent here. There's no doubt about that. And you could potentially play these two guys at the same time. You'd probably need a little bit more pass rush. Although if those numbers that he had as a junior are legitimate, then Moala is a guy that can get after the quarterback. I mean, you never know. You could play both of those guys out there at the same time. But, this probably looks like a guy that's going to come in initially, might be a little bit of a depth piece for Carolina, and then eventually rotate in. Now, Carolina is definitely done, I think, on the interior of the defensive line with this pickup. There's nobody else that they're really targeting. Pecco is the one guy they're waiting on a commitment from him to go elsewhere. And then outside of that, it seems like Carolina is done. Now, that does not mean that they are done on the defensive line, because there is a guy out of the state of North Carolina here, a guy that reclassified into the 2026 class from the 2027 class, and Andrew Rogers, that Carolina is looking at, the 6'6", 240-pound edge rusher out of Grimsley High School in Greensboro, North Carolina. And this is a guy that Carolina has been on ever since he is reclassified. They really want this one to add to that edge rusher room where they already have a few commits that they like, but I think they want to shore it up. That's another area on this team that right now, they have some questions about the depth of this room, and they are going to lose some guys after this season is over. Price Yates will be gone. Smith Vilbert will be gone. And so Carolina is going to have to make up for those guys not being there. They've already got a couple of guys that they brought in off the edge with Xavier Griffin Haynes, who is highly rated, Ashton Blatt. And then you've got Lawrence Brown, who's a little bit more of a developmental guy because of just how thin he is. Andrew Rogers at 6'6", 240, in that area, very long, probably a little bit thinner in frame because of just how tall he is. But I do think with 240 pounds already on his frame, that certainly fits what Carolina is looking for. So expect them to continue to push very hard for him. He is a guy that is expected to announce his commitment later on this month, August 22nd. If I remember correctly, that is actually his team's first game of the year. They open in Bank of America Stadium. I will be in attendance for that game. Might actually be part of the broadcast crew for that game for local television here in Charlotte. So that could be a really cool way for us to get a little insight on him as he, closes in on his decision. As I try to pull up Grimsley's high school schedule here, I believe that is their first game is on, Friday, August 22nd. Not sure if he's planning to do it pregame or if he's planning to do it post-game, but that is an 8 o'clock game. You will be able to watch it live on the NFHS network, or if you are local here in Charlotte, I would believe that it is going to be on one of the television stations here. So a really cool opportunity for you guys to check out one of the Tar Heels' top remaining targets in this 2026 class after he did reclassify. Now we go to the guy that's probably a little bit more of a talking point for Carolina here in this class. Even though Moala is a big get, both literally and figuratively, he is a guy that Carolina really needed to fill a need. Well, one of the other areas that may have still been seen as a need for this staff, but maybe not a need from from the fan perspective. I mean, we talked about it. We did not think that tight end was still a need, but you get a guy like Carson Sneed, who is incredibly talented. You got his brother on the team as a transfer. There was a reason that you brought him in. Part of that was that you definitely wanted to get his brother here. And I think that was one of the avenues that Carolina took. I also think there might be some things that they do like about Dayton Sneed's game. But Carson certainly was a big part of that reason why Carolina wanted to get his brother into the fold. And now they get Carson into the fold as he officially flips from Tennessee to Carolina. There were some rumors here the last couple of days. There were some crystal ball predictions that were cast, or some forecasts that were cast by Rivals.com. And now it is official. The 6'6", 248-pound tight end out of Donaldson Christian Academy in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, his height and weight is not confirmed. That's one of the things in the scouting report on him that was written on 24/7 Sports that they want to stress, is that his height has not been confirmed. But they do believe that he is a guy that is in that 6'5" area, which means that he is a big, lanky tight end. There is a lot to like about that. But the thing is that he has pretty good weight on him. He had to play offensive line as a sophomore. And so with that, he had to put on more weight to be able to play that left tackle spot that he played. And I think he has kept that weight on for the most part. You could see, though, on his junior film, definitely thinned out a little bit, but not too much. It feels like he's probably that 248 might be the proper weight for him, and might be the perfect playing size for him at 6'5" or 6'6". This is a guy that, chooses Carolina over Ole Miss and Florida, two schools that he officially visited back in June, and they were trying to do the exact same thing with him. Carolina hosted him for an official visit back on the weekend of April 25th, along with his brother, who ended up committing shortly thereafter. Carson held on to his commitment until this point, but ends up flipping his commitment now. Sneed is the number 404 overall prospect in the class and the number 18 tight end prospect in the class, according to 24/7 Sports composite player rankings. As I mentioned, he hails from Donaldson Christian Academy in Nashville, Tennessee. So an in-state guy that Carolina ends up going out and getting. In 13 games this past year, he caught 33 passes for 409 yards and 6 touchdowns on offense, and collected 44 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, an interception on the defensive side of the ball. The prior year, as a sophomore, he finished with 15 catches for 297 yards and 10 touchdowns, but he did split his time between tight end and left tackle. Also spent some time on the defensive side of the ball. The left tackle spot was a spot where they suffered so many injuries that they needed him to step up into that role. They thought, hey, let's take a tight end who's got some size on him, a guy that can block just a little bit. And he succeeded in that role. He was a really good run blocker, showed some nice violence, did a really good job of knocking guys down to the ground, stacking up some of those pancake blocks. Really liked what I saw from him in that aspect. I think that was incredibly valuable for him at the time, and I think is what is going to make him such an effective player at this level, is because he is a very complete player. He isn't, a guy that is going to come in here, really specify in one area of the game. It's not going to be that he is a receiving threat that really needs to work on becoming a blocker, and it's not going to be that he's a blocking threat that needs to really become a receiver. Carolina has a couple of guys in this class that already fit into that category, but he's a guy that is really balanced and probably is the most complete tight end that Carolina is going to have committed and hopefully signed really since they brought in Bryson Nesbitt. They weren't able to complete the signing of Marshall Pritchett, who was a guy that was very talented as well. That was a guy that, I think if he ends up committing, probably is in that same category. But this is a guy that hopefully Carolina is able to hold on to and will be the highest rated tight end commitment since Bryson Nesbitt committed back in I think that was 2020 or 2021. One of those two classes was where he committed to Carolina. You look at Sneed at that size, you would think probably a guy that's going to be throwing a lot of 50-50 balls. Not really. It's a little bit shocking how little they use that ability because he has it. He has that ability to high point the football, go up and get it, come down in traffic with it. They use it sometimes in the red zone. I would expect Carolina will probably use it a little bit more. The thing is that you go to his junior tape, it's almost completely different than his sophomore tape. His sophomore tape, a lot of finding, the soft spots in the zone, a lot of the shorter to intermediate level plays, a lot of the wheel routes down the sidelines. That's where he would succeed there. And in the flats would really be where he would succeed. This year, much different. They would split him out wide. He did a really good job of freeing himself up with some of the shifty route running. I do think there's some areas where he could be just a little bit more crisp in terms of how he runs the routes, in terms of rounding some of them off and stuff like that. But I really do think that the shifty route running makes him a problem for especially if they're going to put linebackers on them, but safeties and even some corners, it's going to cause problems for them because of how effective he is as a route runner. That shiftiness also shows up after the catch, allows him to turn, some of these short catches into big gains. He does a really good job of shaking off defenders, good contact balance. I think he is certainly a guy that you think is going to be able to create after the catch for Carolina, which is something that they really would like to see from their tight end group. He proved that he is a guy that can stretch the field after some questions about his ability to do that his sophomore season. Does a really good job of getting down the field. Didn't see a lot of him in the middle of the defense being able to catch those deep balls in the middle of out of the inline tight end spot, but saw, he has that ability to get free downfield if he lines up on the outside. So it'll be interesting to see if he does play more in line, is he able to stretch the field the way that he needs to be able to at this level? Isn't a blazer, but does have some nice speed. I think that's certainly something that you like to see. That's what also is going to make him a little bit tricky when it comes to after the catch. And that's something that Carolina hasn't really had, a tight end that can be dynamic after the catch as well as before the catch. So I think that is certainly something that would be welcome for Carolina in this offense. His time spent as a tackle in his sophomore season, as I mentioned, very, very effective for him. And I think is going to be something that is going to show up early on in his career, that he had that experience where he was forced to, pretty much be a blocker down in and down out. The pass protection stuff, don't know how much they'll really use that. But I do think that what you saw from him as as a tackle in the run game is something that you can certainly be encouraged about and hope that it translates over to this level. I think he's a guy that has a chance to be an early impact player in Chapel Hill just because of how complete of a player he is. I think the ability that he brings as a receiver, especially if he can sort of fine tune some of that route running, I definitely think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. And Carolina could need, somebody to step up at that tight end position because you've got Jake Johnson, who is only a junior. He'll be back next year. But the thing is that outside of him, everybody else is relatively unproven. And even Jake, to his credit, look, he had a good start to his career at Texas A&M, but he also needs to prove himself as a receiver here at Carolina after last year not really doing much as a receiver after taking over once Bryson Nesbitt went down. So the tight end room, I mean, it's presenting opportunities for Carson Sneed, I think, early on in his career. Now the question is he going to be able to come in and take advantage of that? I think he probably will. I really like everything about his game, and I think he's a guy that is really going to shine in a Tar Heel uniform. This is a great job done by the staff. I mean, having to compete against SEC opponents to land his commitment is never easy, especially when you, again, have yet to coach a single game on the field. They have yet to even coach a fall practice yet. And these guys are committing to Carolina. So that is huge for the Tar Heels. They have done a tremendous job, and they now sit with 35 commitments in the 2026 class. So again, with some of the guys that they brought in the transfer portal, some of the holdovers being upperclassmen, there's inevitably going to be some transfers after year one, regardless of how it works out. Guys that spend a year in the system and just learn that this is not the system for them. We saw it under Deion Sanders. There were still changes and shifts that were made after that first year. Now, part of that was that Colorado also wasn't a good football team. We're hoping that's not necessarily going to be the case for Carolina, but I do think there will be a lot of shifting again next offseason, and that's part of the reason why Carolina is wanting to bring in 35 commitments in this class. And the other thing is that you've got 105 scholarships. So why not use them? That's how Bill Belichick, I think, is looking at it. You're getting all these guys that are committing to the class. And once again, you got two guys today that I think are, maybe not necessarily headliners, but both guys that I think are going to be very impactful in their time at Carolina. Two guys that are ranked, inside of the top 610 prospects in the entire country. Unfortunately, you'd like for them to be ranked inside the top 600. Barely outside of that top 600 for Viliami Moala. So, yeah, I mean, the hope is that these guys, come in here as part of this class and can be effective early on. But regardless, Carolina's done a tremendous job in this recruiting class so far, which does sit 18th overall, 4th in the ACC, according to 24/7 Sports composite player rankings. If you're going off of rivals, Carolina's 19th in the overall rankings. Not sure exactly where they are in the ACC, but I would imagine it's probably either 4th or 5th, something very similar. So Carolina's doing their part in this recruiting class so far. It's just a matter of if they are able to keep all of these guys and who, could they possibly add. Carolina's already flip some guys from other states, going into certain states like Tennessee, like Ohio, like Texas, taking away recruits from those states. Now the question is, can Carolina find a way to flip maybe some in-state guys or land another big in-state guy like Andrew Rogers? That would be huge for Carolina. I know one other guy that people are going to want updates on, CJ Sadler, the 4-star athlete out of the state of Michigan. Carolina, at this point, still looks like they are in the lead for him. But again, it really all comes down to Michigan. Are they going to end up going all in on him? Do they want, is he, in a position right now where his scholarship is committable? There are apparently some concerns about some of the off the field stuff with him from the Michigan perspective. Not sure what exactly that means. But if there is, then, Carolina's probably going to be able to bring him in. If not, and Michigan can start to stomach that, you do wonder if Michigan ends up taking over as a team that was the longtime favorite early on in the recruitment. Many predictions in their favor that eventually flipped to Carolina. Now the question is Michigan going to be able to flip them back before August 15th? Or does he even make his announcement on August 15th? I'm not sure. We're a couple of Fridays away from that. Hopefully he ends up sticking to that commitment date. If he does, I feel pretty confident that Carolina is going to be the pick. Last couple of notes that I mentioned earlier in the show, Carolina with no players on the All-ACC preseason team. This is the first time since 2019 that Carolina does not have a preseason All-ACC player, so a nice chip on the shoulder for the players on this team this year. Only 4 Tar Heels were nominated by the staff to be on the All-ACC ballot. I mentioned when I voted for the All-ACC players, there weren't a lot of guys on there. It was a little bit shocking because in the past with Mac Brown, you've seen a lot of those names on that list. Even if I can remember during 2019, a lot of those guys, even though he didn't coach those guys, a lot of them were on the list. So a different strategy from this staff here that they're taking towards it. The only guys that were able to be voted on, but all of them ended up falling short. Austin Blaskey, Christo Kelly on the offensive line, Andrew Simpson at linebacker, and cornerback Thaddeus Dixon. Those were the only ones. Me personally, I did have Thaddeus Dixon as a first-team All-ACC corner. Everybody else left them off of my ballot just because of the talent that is there in the ACC this season. But as I mentioned, that should be something that should be used as a motivational tool for this roster, that they are being doubted. There are a lot of people around the country, we've heard some of the national analysts that have said it, that this team isn't really that talented, that this is going to be a tough year for Bill Belichick. Really, you're on one side or the other. Either you think this is going to be a great year, that Bill Belichick is going to be able to outshine the talent gap and is going to lead Carolina to a ton of success, or the lack of talent for this group is really going to hold them back. So hopefully this is a motivating factor for this team. Also, did want to mention and congratulate Will Hardy for being a guy that was nominated to the All-State Warfall Trophy watch list for this upcoming season. This is an award that's given out each year for guys that are involved in the community, giving back to their community, and that is something that Will Hardy has done in his time at in Chapel Hill. He has been one of Carolina's top guys when it's come to volunteering and everything like that off the field. Is involved in a couple other things here that I think he deserves a lot of credit for as well. Let's see here. Served as the football program's representative in student athlete advisory committee, as well as volunteer experience with the team Impact and Habitat for Humanity. So he's a guy that's been involved in his community here during his time in Chapel Hill. So congratulations to him for making that watch list. And just in case we didn't mention it, but I think we did on the last edition of the podcast, another watch list for a Carolina player, Andrew Simpson, the linebacker from Boise State that transferred to Carolina this offseason. He's been named to the 2025 Dick Butkus Award preseason watch list. Of course, that award presented to the nation's best linebacker every single year by the Butkus Foundation. You look at his numbers last year in 12 games at Boise State, he tallied 46 total tackles, as well as a decent amount of tackles for loss. So they did not put that in the article. I thought they were going to put that in the article that I was reading from. And unfortunately, I don't have that number in front of me right now, but a decent number of tackles for loss to go along with a few sacks. So a really good, season for him. Last 2 seasons really have been pretty solid from him. The sophomore year, a little bit better than his junior year. And so hopefully Carolina gets the sophomore version of Andrew Simpson in there at linebacker. We'll, of course, be talking more about that when we break down the linebackers coming up sometime later next week. As we continue our position previews coming up tomorrow, we are going to have the tight ends. That'll be the group that we'll be previewing tomorrow, so make sure that you guys stick around for that. And then on Sunday, we will have Brett Ciencia from Pick Six Previews. He'll be breaking down Carolina for this season. He's a guy that's as accurate as just about anybody when it comes to predicting from these preseason magazines. And so he's going to be on the show on Sunday. Make sure that you guys check that out. That'll just be an addition to the podcast where it's me and him, and then that's it. It'll be a very short edition of the podcast, so make sure that you guys don't miss that. And then when we get to Monday, Zach Hubbard will be back with us. He will talk about the 2 commitments that we got today, any other news that's come out on the recruiting trail, and then we will be sitting down with Trayshawn Ruffin, the Tar Heels 2026 4-star defensive tackle commit. He talks about everything from why he committed to Carolina to the commitments that we just landed today, his connection with Viliami Moala, as well as Carson Sneed. So you don't want to miss that. I sat down with him actually just a little while ago before I started recording this edition of the podcast. So make sure that you guys are keeping an eye out for that. That's going to be a really big edition of the podcast there. And then hopefully on Tuesday, we will be rolling straight into the offensive line preview. So we're going to be hitting it hard. I mean, these editions of the podcast are going to be rolling out like hotcakes. So make sure that you guys are subscribed, whether it is to the podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. The YouTube page is the best place to check out the podcast. Of course, you can check it out on Twitter or on Facebook as well. Either one of those options is also great, but we do encourage you to go over to our YouTube page, give it a watch there as well, and make sure that when you do go there, you also subscribe to the podcast. That would definitely help us. Actually, when you subscribe to the channel, it will subscribe you to both the Heel Tough blog podcast, as well as the Four Corners podcast, any of the editions that we do. Same thing if you go over and follow the Twitter page at Heel Tough blog, or if you go to the Facebook page, search Heel Tough blog on Facebook and it should pop up. All of that stuff is in one central location for you. Meanwhile, over on the website side of things, plenty of stuff going on. As I mentioned, with the 2 commitments, we did have articles that went up about both of those guys. So make sure you go back and read those articles about Viliami Moala as well as Carson Sneed, a little more in-depth breakdown from me on their film and everything like that. So make sure you go and give that a read. And then also we are going to have an article coming out tomorrow about the biggest battles going into camp that we are keeping an eye on. So make sure that you guys are locked in on the website. HeelToughBlog.com is one of the websites with all the shifting around, one of the websites that hasn't gone anywhere. Same spot for you guys, same setup. So make sure that you go there. Check it morning, afternoon, and evening for all of the latest news and opinions on Tar Heel football and basketball. On the basketball side of things, Carolina lands another commit, this time out of the transfer portal from High Point. And so we are going to be discussing that. I'm not sure when that edition of the podcast is coming up. I think it might be tonight, but I have honestly no idea. But we are going to be doing one of those soon on that. So make sure that you're keeping an eye out for that. And then, of course, Josh had you covered on the website last night. You can go back and read the commitment article for the young man that committed last night. Ivan, I forget how to pronounce his last name. We were talking about it just a little bit earlier today. But go check that out. Give it a read. That one has been pretty successful so far. Thanks to you guys. So yeah, make sure you check it out. Ivan Metalkovic, I believe is how you pronounce his name. So give that one a read on the website and keep an eye out for any other news that'll be coming out, including with the Luka Bogovac situation that is still ongoing at this time, waiting for him to officially get on campus. And when that news does come down, we will have you covered both on the website and on the podcast side of things. So that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always,